Passion towards friends churns like water. Hatred towards enemies burns like fire. Through dark ignorance, one forgets what to adopt and what to reject. To abandon one's homeland is the practice of a bodhisattva. So here in this second practice of the bodhisattva, it's about renunciation. Renunciation, in its most core sense, is renouncing the world, leaving your home literally, going away from the stresses, challenges, and distractions of ordinary life. And that could show up as a yogic path, someone going into hermitage, or it could show up as a monastic path, someone becoming part of an organization committed to those ends. But here, the meaning that I think is most relevant to those of us who practice in our society as people who are integrating Dharma into being a human being in the sense of a more general or standard approach to life, that's having all the challenges and ups and downs of being someone who has relationships and family connections and children and partners and jobs and visions and aspirations for their life. Because of course there are many beautiful ways to practice, but that is the way that most of us are practicing at Dharma at this time. And I'm very keen on the idea that one can practice beautifully in the world. But the beauty is not without pain and challenge and difficulty. And I think the three poisons, or this attraction, aversion, and indifference, pervade any sentient being's nervous system and, sort of autonomic, fight, flight, freeze, are examples of this deep evolutionary biological impulse. But then from a subjective point of view, as a human being with an emotional experience in our inner body, these felt senses and energies that are, and the way we feel our thoughts and think about what we feel, and there's so much energy that can be aroused in our subjective experience, and it can be a kind of turmoil where we get ridden by our own thoughts and our own mind. And I think sometimes when people fear going on a solitary meditation retreat, if they're, experienced enough where that's a good idea, they are probably afraid of their own mind and heart. Oh boy, I'm going to be alone with myself. Then there's no one else to blame. I get to work with my own challenges and see how much I produce my own confusions, and or at least the way I relate to them is mine. And I'm mine to work with. So what is ours to work with is knowing what to adopt and what to reject. But it's hard to do that when we're lost in things. So that's the notion of ignorance. Through dark ignorance, one forgets what to adopt and what to reject. We forget to practice. We forget to take space. We forget to slow down. We forget to eat. We forget to exercise. We forget to get enough sleep. Literally, we get drawn into the content and production of our own inner subjective experience, and it imbalances us. And when there are people we want in our life, and it can stir us up if we get blended into that desire, and we lose our sense of ourselves being a part of everything, but also being an individual who is not just lost out in the world. Sometimes we cast ourselves like a fishing line out into others and objects, and we get so passionate or obsessed with some kind of external joy and happiness that we sometimes we often leave ourselves behind. In the same way, when we get caught up on how much we don't like certain people or certain situations, we get churned up and burned by that energy, which is complex. Anger can be the spur to action, and it's a very, very healthy thing when it is that spark. But when it becomes an abiding state, it's actually toxic for our system. We're in a fight or mobilized state. We cannot heal in our body. We can't digest properly and get nutrients. I mean, it's serious. It's not an opinion. It's chronic kind of fixated hatred, but even just anger that is unprocessed is damaging to our life and our system and our ability to be the people we want to be. And also just makes us very difficult to be around because we're radiating pain. And it's okay to be in pain, but to feel the pain makes it a grieving process, a healing process. We integrate it. When there's hatred and anger that's focused either inwardly or outwardly, we're missing the point of actually feeling why are we angry? What can we do about it? That's where anger is to spur us forward. So it burns like a fire. And if you've ever gotten burned, it doesn't just go away right away. You have to, every time it touches something, it still stings for a long time until it heals. We have to feel our pain to heal. We can't just keep burning our hands and saying, who cares? We keep grabbing hot things because we're frustrated, So the idea of abandoning one's homeland, in this case, then, is not about running away from our conditions, but rather paying attention to the conditions we're in. And renunciation, in the more clean and pure sense from my perspective, is actually about how we work with our own energy, how we work with our ignorance, how we work with our desire, how we work with our frustration. And renouncing, knowing to reject fixation and becoming narrow and eclipsed in a very small facet or blended with this very one part of ourselves, we see that as not helpful to being in touch with our true nature, which is more magnanimous, more free, more compassionate to ourselves and others, more enjoyable, still subject to the basic qualities of suffering that happen, but not engaged in what is often called unnecessary suffering, where we're producing further troubles. So renunciation is really giving up the ways that we look at things that are destructive. And, it's that which calms the waves of our own inner turmoil, not because we're suppressing things or spacing out or bypassing, because that's one approach that's very incomplete, but rather through feeling things and looking at them differently. And that's how we grow, right? We look at things differently. When we're afraid of something and we don't have all the information, we have a certain experience. When we have more information, maybe the quality of the fear changes, and we have a wider vision of, oh, now I see why I was afraid, and I don't feel that fear. Maybe we feel a different one. But that's the journey of learning about ourselves and transforming our perspective. And in some ways, it's as simple as seeing that when we eclipse, when perceptually, when our awareness focalizes onto certain objects or experiences at the exclusion of others, right? When we lose the sense of spaciousness or totality of awareness, which is its natural state. When we eclipse, that perceptual problem is what creates so many of these turmoils, and that's what we're actually renouncing, is that it's okay when it happens, but that's what we don't want to invest in, and that's abandoning the habitual homeland of eclipsing and narrowing, and we're coming home to the true home of our true nature, which is vast, clear, vivid, lively, full of playfulness. And it requires us to have a sense of humor and sort of be able to see ourselves and say, there's going to be hard times. There's going to be good times. If we place our refuge in always feeling pleasure and happy, we know we'll be disappointed. And those are the concerns of the immature, as they say. We're sort of, once we see that life is not like that we have to work with the ups and the downs, and it's not our fault if we're having downs, it's just part of life. Then it's a question of how do we work with that with magnanimity and equanimity. So I was going to try to say two words and I got lost. So it's a really good question, and I think the best way is getting out of the eclipse and then the equality or the equanimous, magnanimous aspects of our nature are just already there. So it's not so much of an accomplishment as abandoning the ways that we obscure what's already shining. But we do have to get familiar with this spacious shining and not have that terrify us or become something we are afraid of. If it does, then we have to work with that fear and those emotions. And this is why I also think to abandon one's homeland just in the physical sense is a very primitive version of this, because you know your shadow follows you wherever you go. Wherever you go, there you are. So here the idea is not that it would be nice if it was so simple, if you just went to another place and then suddenly you didn't have all these patterns following you. But we say that even through lifetimes these patterns follow people, so they're very persistent. And the real abandoning of the homeland is abandoning that which resists our growth.